All right, let's get into it. Most of us think we know the Garden of Eden story, right? But what if it's not just a simple creation myth? What if it's actually one of the most brilliant pieces of ancient counter-propaganda ever written? A full-blown revolution, just hiding in plain sight.
So that's the big question we're tackling. We're going to peel back literally thousands of years of interpretation to see how a story about a garden was, in fact, a direct shot at the most powerful empires on the planet. But to really get that, first we have to understand the world it was written to defy.
Okay, so picture this. It's the 6th century BCE. Israelite thinkers are captives in Babylon, which is the superpower of its day. And in places like Babylon or Egypt or Mesopotamia, your creation story, well, it was basically your political constitution. It laid out the rules for everything and everyone.
Yeah, these were not just campfire tales. You can think of them as the operating system for society. They answered that fundamental question, why is the world set up this way? And, surprise, surprise, the answer always benefited the people at the very top.
And you know, these myths had a pretty clever formula. In stories like the Babylonian Atrahasis, humans are made from two things, clay and the blood of a dead god. This created a perfect two-class system. You had the kings and pharaohs, who had that divine blood, so they got to rest. And then you had everyone else, who were basically just clay, made to be a slave workforce for the gods. I mean, it's a brilliant justification for a really brutal system.
But there was a group of captives living right there in the heart of the empire who saw right through it. They knew the pharaohs weren't actually gods, and they knew these stories were being used as tools of oppression. So, right from the depths of their exile, they started to write a response.
And let's just ground ourselves in the history for a second. This is after the destruction of Jerusalem. The city is gone, the temple is just rubble, their entire history has been demolished. These writers are exiles, and they're seeing the full might of Babylon firsthand. So what they're doing is really an act of intellectual survival.
They couldn't fight back with swords and shields, so they fought back with ideas. They took the very thing their captors used to justify slavery, the creation myth, and they decided to hack it from the inside out.
And this is where we get to the core of their genius. See, they didn't just write a new story. They systematically took apart the imperial narrative, piece by piece, starting with the very definition of what it even means to be human.
Now look at this. This is their most subtle and probably their most explosive change. The Genesis writers, they keep the earthly material, the clay, but they get rid of the divine blood, the thing that was only for kings, and they replace it with divine breath, which is breathed into all of humanity. With that one simple swap, from blood to breath, they basically democratized divinity.
And the results of that one change were just massive. All of a sudden, everyone has inherent dignity, not just the king. Our purpose isn't to be slaves, but to be partners, to serve and guard the garden. And maybe most radical of all, the right to rest is no longer some royal privilege. It's woven right into the fabric of creation itself.
You have to understand, this idea of Shabbat, of ceasing, it was totally unheard of. The gods of Babylon and Egypt, they never rested. In fact, they created humans for the sole purpose of not having to work anymore. But the Genesis story dares to imagine a creator who is so complete, so secure, that he just stops. To a population of forced laborers, this was a revolutionary whisper saying, your value is not defined by your productivity.
Then they get even bolder. The story actually names the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. I mean, the absolute lifeblood of the Babylonian Empire, and says they flow out of their God's garden. This is pure psychological warfare. It's telling the exiles, hey, the very source of your captor's power, it belongs to our God.
Okay, so what about that famous tree, right? The knowledge of good and evil. Well, that phrase didn't really mean knowing right from wrong like we think of it. In the ancient world, it was actually a legal term for the king's absolute power to define reality and make laws. So by making that tree off limits, the story is drawing a line in the sand around human power.
And the implication of that is just stunning. The text is saying, right to the face of Nebuchadnezzar and every emperor who would come after him, you are not God. Your authority has a limit. There is a moral law that you simply do not get to define.
And finally, they come for the social structure itself. That phrase, Ezer Kenegdo, has been so tragically mistranslated as helpmeet. But the word Ezer is used for a strong, powerful kind of helper, the same way God is a helper to Israel. And Kenegdo means corresponding to him, or face-to-face. The original vision isn't hierarchy at all. It's a powerful, equal partnership.
So what we have here is this incredible blueprint for human dignity, for equality, for justice. But here comes the tragic twist in the story, because over the centuries, this revolutionary text was basically hijacked and inverted to justify the very same oppression it was written to tear down.
And you can see exactly how it happened. The divine right to rest for everyone got twisted into a work ethic that shames people for being tired or poor. That universal dignity, the divine breath in all of us, became the divine right of kings and elites to rule. The radical equality of partnership became the subordination of women. And the call to stewardship, to care for creation, became a license for dominion over it, to exploit it.
I mean, the ultimate irony, right? The very chains these ancient intellectuals tried so hard to break were eventually reforged using their own words. It's just a profound and really cautionary tale about how even the most liberating ideas can be twisted in the service of power.
But this is why understanding the original context is so important. It helps us reclaim that original power. Genesis 2 wasn't just a bedtime story. It was a diagnostic tool. It was a guide for recognizing and resisting any system that claims it has a divine right to use people, demand endless work, and define justice only for its own benefit.
And really, that leaves us with a question for our own time. What are the big, dominant stories that justify our social and economic systems today? And maybe more importantly, who are the storytellers out there writing the counter-narratives that might just be the key to setting us free?